Peacock Redo and Other Short Stories, narrated by the author, James R. Nelson, story number 1, Peacock Redo. This story was inspired by my novel, The Peacock Prophecy. Blanche MacDonald was flipping through the pages of the Chicago Sun-Times, where she worked as an investigative reporter. She stopped when a small article in the travel section caught her eye. "Hey, Frank, look at this." Her young assistant, Frank Irving, walked over from his desk. "What you got?" She pointed to the page. "You're probably too young to remember, but I wonder if you ever heard about this." He glanced down at the paper. "What is it?" "Have you ever been to Mackinac Island?" He smiled. "Yeah, a few times. My buddy has a sailboat, and we've done the race over there twice. It's a great place. Love the fudge. According to this article, the infamous Peacock Inn has reopened." He gave her a blank look. "Is that something I'm supposed to care about?" She laughed. "Yep, just what I thought. Too young. My memories are hazy, but I remember the place was very popular with the Chicago crowd about 20 years ago. The guy who owned it held seances up in the attic. I think they're doing that again." "Really?" "I don't think I ever heard of it." "I know. I know about it because my crazy aunt went there a few times. She loved it. But something happened. I can't remember what. I think the first owner went to prison, and they shut the place down." Frank smiled. "I got an idea. You're the investigative reporter. I think you should get the boss to let you go over there and do a story. Let me do a little research first. It would be fun to see the island again. It's not very often you can go to a place where there aren't any cars. And those beautiful Victorian homes. It's like stepping 100 years back in time. Tell the boss you need an assistant. I want to go too." 4 days later, Blanche and Frank were sitting on the top deck of a ferry sailing across the waves of the Straits of Mackinac. "I'm glad I brought this jacket," Frank said. "I'm surprised how cold it is out here." Blanche wrapped her coat tightly around her shoulders. "Thank goodness it's sunny. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful day once we get to the island." He turned to her and broke out laughing. "What's so funny? I can't get used to you with that gray wig. It makes you look 30 years older." She smiled. "That's what it's supposed to do, dummy. I want them to think I'm a grieving widow." As the island came into view, she said, "Remember, I'm here to connect with dear departed husband at the seance tonight. If we can bust them, it'll be a great story for the paper." When they arrived at the dock, representatives from the various hotels were there to greet everyone arriving from the ferry. They spotted a young man who was holding a Peacock Inn sign. He was standing next to a bicycle and cart. He grabbed their luggage and pointed where the hotel was located. It was an easy 6-block walk. Frank purchased a box of fudge as they made their way along the shoreline to the inn. When they approached the desk at the hotel to register, a woman greeted them warmly. "I see by your reservation you'll be attending tonight's seance. Is there anyone in particular you're attempting to contact?" Blanche looked down at the desk. "Oh, yes. My poor, dear husband. I miss him so." The woman reached across and took her hand. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Has he been gone long?" "It'll be 3 years in September. It's such a shame. Our congregation misses him terribly, as do I." "He was a church-goer?" the receptionist asked. Blanche's eyes got wide. "I'd say he was the pastor." The receptionist let go of her hand and grabbed 2 keys. "Here are your room keys." She handed one to Blanche. "Room 212 for you." She reached over to Frank. "And room 213 for you." "The seance begins at 9 o'clock sharp." She pointed across the large lobby. "Your rooms are up those stairs, halfway down the hallway. Enjoy the rest of your day on the island." As they lugged their suitcases up the narrow stairs, Frank grunted. "You'd think they'd have a bellboy or someone to take your luggage up to the room. They only opened this spring. Maybe that wasn't in the budget." Blanche looked around the dim corridor. "Is it me, or is this place giving you the creeps too?" Frank laughed. "I bet they recently installed this old water-stained, torn wallpaper during the restoration just to get everybody in the mood for that spooky seance thing." He rubbed his hand on the wall. "It feels damp." He sniffed his fingers. "Ow, mold." He wiped his hand on his pants. They unpacked their bags in their respective rooms, freshened up a bit, and then spent the day browsing the many shops on Market and Main Street. After a magnificent dinner of freshly caught whitefish, they returned to the Peacock Inn just in time to climb the stairs up to the seance room, or attic as Frank called it. 3 other people accompanied them up the stairs. 1 older couple and a woman dressed in black. A veil covered her face. They were greeted at the top of the stairs by a tall, thin man wearing a black suit. He guided them to a circle of chairs. When everyone was seated, he sat down next to a small table where a candle was burning. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said. "My name is Clarence Von Dyke. I'm the nephew of Edward Von Dyke, the man who started these seances so many years ago." Frank elbowed Blanche and whispered, "Do you think he's going to mention what happened to good old Edward?" Blanche smiled. "I'm impressed. Someone's done his homework." Clarence continued, "If you look to your right, you will see the original spirit cabinet my uncle salvaged from an old farm in New Hampshire that belonged to the famous Van Dyke brothers, Ezra and Ebenezer. In the late 1800s, they conducted seances all across Europe for kings, queens, and all manner of potentates. It's an honor to be able to use their original cabinet tonight." He held up his hand. "I'd like to remind you that we're dealing with the spirit world. I will attempt to be a conduit to the other side, but I have no power myself. Some nights we're able to have contact from the beyond, and sometimes we aren't. Please join hands and bow your heads." As Blanche grabbed for Frank's hand, the lights dimmed. Clarence blew out the candle, plunging the room into total darkness. Everyone sat in silence for a few moments. Then Clarence said, "Spirit world, we come to you tonight with the anticipation of communicating with our lost loved ones. We humbly beg of you to open a channel for us so we can be reunited, at least for a few precious moments, with those we love and miss so dearly." From the corner of the room, a soft jingle emanated from deep inside the spirit cabinet. Slowly it increased in volume. Blanche turned. Was something bouncing off the walls inside the cabinet? The cabinet door flew open, and a glowing tambourine floated out and traveled over everyone's head. Startled by the noise, the crowd looked up to see what was making all the racket. As soon as the tambourine disappeared, Blanche turned back toward the cabinet. Now melodious trumpet music played from inside. A mournful tune sounded above their heads as the instrument floated out the doors and traveled the same path as the tambourine. It spun around a few times, and then the bell pointed directly at Blanche. She shrank in her chair, fearful that it was about to blast out some kind of loud screeching noise in her ear. After a few seconds, it zoomed upward and disappeared just like the tambourine. Frank squeezed her hand and whispered, "That was great. Can't wait to see what happens next." "Shh," someone in the group said. Suddenly the candle flame reignited, and Clarence slumped over in his chair. A deep voice, quite unlike his, boomed, "Gideon's trumpet calls to the other side. We need to speak with Mrs. Olson's young son. Please, Perry, your grieving mother wishes to hear from you." Blanche whispered, "This is sick. We need to bust this creep." A knocking came from the direction of the spirit cabinet. A young boy's voice called out, "Mother, I'm here." The woman next to Blanche let go of her hand and stood up. "Bobby, I'm so sorry we bought you that canoe for your birthday. I miss you so much." "Don't be sad, Mommy," the frail, wavering voice replied. "I'm happy here. Grandma's with me." A quick whoosh of wind extinguished the candle flame. "No, Bobby, don't go, please, don't go. Mommy wants to tell you that she loves you." The room filled with the scent of pipe tobacco. Clarence sat upright. A voice, this time with a slightly British accent, said, "Gertrude, why do you disturb me?" A woman across from Blanche said, "Disturb you? I just wanted to hear your voice. Oh, and to ask you where you hid those bonds. When you come to these seances, you disturb my peace. I need to forget about the old world and embrace the new. You make that impossible by always pulling me back. Well, you can bloody well fix that, Victor. Just tell me where you hid those bonds. I'm about to lose the house. I need that money. What about your new husband? Use his money. The man next to Frank muttered, Hey, wait a minute. There was a pause. Gertrude said, It's a long story. I need those bonds. Clarence moaned and began to thrash around in his seat. The older woman called out, Mr. Van Dyke, are you all right? Clarence slowly regained his composure. The accented voice returned, Check the fireplace. They're behind one of the stones. Fireplace? We don't have a fireplace, Victor. You've only been gone 6 years. Did you forget about the house so quickly? Clarence moved in his chair. Victor, Victor, I'm losing you. Please don't leave yet. Gertrude needs those bonds. The room got colder, and a faint blue light illuminated the surroundings. Clarence once again slumped down in his chair. Do I feel the Reverend Spirit? Is the Reverend crossing over? Oh, Blanche, I'm so happy to see you. I'm in heaven now. It's just like I thought it would be. Please don't be sad about my passing. I'm counting the days until we can be together again. But I want you to have a long and happy life before we're reunited. Oh, the fog is rolling in. I can't see you. Where did you go? Where did you go, my darling? Blanche, Blanche, Blanche. The lights flickered back on, and Clarence's body shivered. He sat up and looked around like he didn't know where he was. A young woman, whom Blanche recognized from the reception desk, appeared. She took him by the hand and led him to a door at the back of the room. The small group stood up and walked over to the stairs. The older woman's husband ducked over to the spirit cabinet and opened its doors. He peered inside and started tapping on the walls. George, his wife called out, stop that. Come over here and help me down the stairs. Before anyone could leave, Blanche ripped off her wig and called out, Everyone, please listen to me. I hope you don't believe any of this nonsense. None of this is true. It's all a big fake. The older couple turned to her with looks of shock on their faces, while the other woman gasped and put her hand up to her mouth. Who are you to say this is all fake? Bobby's mother asked. My name is Blanche MacDonald. I'm an investigative journalist from the Chicago Sun-Times. I don't have a husband, living or dead. Did you notice that the woman who checked you in at the reception desk asked you all kinds of personal questions? Well, she wasn't doing that to be friendly. She was doing that to pick your brain for things to use during this charade of a seance. The older couple looked at each other. Gertrude's new husband said, But we've been coming here almost every weekend. We need to find those bonds. Good luck to you, Blanche said, but you're not going to find them here. Remember what Clarence said? Look in the fireplace? Your wife said you don't even have a fireplace. If Victor's spirit was real, don't you think he'd know that? Bobby's mother shot her a hateful look and hurried down the stairs. As Blanche and Frank headed to their rooms, Blanche said, I need a drink. Not a problem. I've got a bottle of whiskey in my suitcase. Wonderful. Blanche sat on a chair in Frank's room and sipped her drink. If I may be so bold, Frank said, I don't think your expose was accepted very well. She raised her glass. Salute. I know. At first I was shocked, but then I started to thinking. These things are carried out for the people that want to believe. Think about it. That poor old couple has been coming here every weekend this whole summer. They want to believe. Frank nodded. And that poor woman in black. That's what upsets me the most. I really don't care if the old couple comes here looking for lost bonds, but that other woman. To come here driven by guilt because of her son's drowning. That's so sad. And that's exactly why I'm going to write one hell of an article telling everyone how cruel this is. I want to shut this damn place down. He got up and locked the door. I don't think it's a smart idea, staying here after you exposed them like that. What were you thinking? I thought about that too, Blanche said, but you had to book a room in order to attend the seance. The ferry service stops at 8 o'clock, so there was no way we could have left the island. The lights flickered a few times and then the room went dark. The lights flickered a few times, and then the room went dark. A noise like an unoiled hinge opening, only much louder, screeched in the room. A freezing cold breeze blew in from the direction of the window. "Frank!" Blanche cried out. Just like that, the lights came back on. She saw Frank lying on the floor, his glass shattered on the old oak planks. He slowly got up to his knees. "What happened?" "We were talking. You were sitting on the edge of the bed. The lights flickered and the room got dark. I heard something. I thought you had opened that window because it got cold in here. Then the lights came back on and you were lying on the floor." He grabbed the windowsill, pulled himself upright, and rubbed his face. "Damn. As soon as the lights went out, it felt like something huge pushed me off the bed." He looked down at his broken glass. "So much for my drink." He glanced over at Blanche. "What happened to your face?" "My face?" "Yeah, look at it. Looks like someone scratched you." She ducked into the bathroom and screamed. "Oh my God, what happened to me?" 3 long, thin scratches ran from her right cheekbone almost to her chin. She walked back into the room holding a wet washcloth to her face. "Forget about that drink. I'm going to bed." In the morning, as Blanche was getting dressed, loud bangs and thumps were coming from Frank's room. What could he be doing in there? She packed most of her suitcase and then knocked on his door. "Want to walk down to town and get some breakfast?" His door opened. "Sure. How's your face?" He stared at her. "Looks good. I can hardly see anything." She smiled and then winced a little. "Good makeup. Worth its weight in gold." She touched her cheek. "Remind me not to laugh." They found a little cafe with windows that opened onto the harbor. As they ate, Blanche asked, "How did you sleep?" Frank sipped his coffee. "Like a baby. Only thing I heard all night was the clip-clop of horses walking on the cobblestone streets. Kind of made me think I was staying upstairs in the hotel on Gunsmoke." He smiled. "No kiddie, though. How about you?" She frowned. "Not so good. I woke up about 3 a.m. and thought the curtains were moving. I could smell something like pipe tobacco mixed with Old Spice, cologne. I almost thought my father was in the room." Frank bit into a piece of bacon. "Pipe tobacco and Old Spice. Those 2 aromas would probably remind 90% of people our age of their parents or their grandparents. I bet they spray in those smells somehow, just like they faked that damn seance upstairs." She looked at him. "Do you think so?" He sat back in his chair. "Wait a minute. Don't tell me you, the original Ghostbuster, the investigative reporter, thinks she got visited by a ghost." Blanche smiled. "I guess you're right." She looked at her watch. "Come on, let's go back and get our suitcases. We've got to catch the 11 o'clock ferry if we want to make it back to Chicago before dark." He finished his coffee and grabbed a check. "Okay, I'll put this on my expense account." When they got back to the Peacock Inn, Bobby's mother was checking out. She turned and stared at them. She must have said something because the woman behind the desk would not make eye contact with them. As they walked up the steep staircase, Blanche asked, "Are you already packed?" Frank nodded. "Yep, just got to grab my bag. I'll meet you in the hallway." Blanche unlocked her room and stepped inside. She folded her pajamas and robe and placed them into the suitcase. She checked the bathroom to make sure she hadn't left anything. Then she straightened the sheets and bedspread. She got down on her knees and looked under the bed to make sure nothing had fallen off the night table. She stopped. Something red glittered on the carpet. She picked it up. No, this couldn't be. She sat on the edge of the bed and slowly opened her hand. It was a man's cufflink with a red ruby mounted on it. It was just like the ones her mother gave the funeral parlor to make sure her father wore with his burial suit. Her chest tightened. As she walked to the window, a loud thud came from Frank's room. She threw open the old leaded glass window and breathed in cool Lake Michigan air. She stared at the cufflink again and then walked over and put it in her purse. She grabbed her suitcase and knocked on Frank's door. There was no answer. She knocked again and then turned the knob. It was locked. She called out, "Frank, come on. We've got to catch the ferry." Still no answer. She pushed on the door. It didn't budge. Blanche left her suitcase in the front of his door and ran down the corridor towards the staircase. She hurried to the reception desk. "Can you get into room 213? Clarence's wife gave her a cold stare. "Did you lock yourself out?" "No, it's my friend, Frank's room. We had breakfast and came back to get our luggage. He said he was all packed and ready to leave. I heard a noise in his room, and he's not responding to me." She looked at her watch again. "We really need to be going." The woman fumbled around in a wooden box and pulled out a long, thin key. "Follow me." Blanche was close behind her as they ascended the staircase. When they got to Frank's room, the woman inserted the key, turned the lock, and slowly pushed the door open. She put her hands to her face and whispered, "Oh no, not another one." Blanche pushed the door open and screamed. Frank lay on the bed face up. His arms were straight up as if he was defending himself. She ran up to him. His nails were bloody and torn. His face was contorted into a hideous grimace of stark fright. His eyes bulged out and his mouth was frozen open in a silent scream. As Blanche stumbled out of the room, the woman followed her and slammed the door shut. Blanche leaned against the damp wall. Her knees were about to give way. What do you mean, another one?" The woman's face darkened. She leaned close and whispered, "An unbeliever."